Hi everyone, it now marks 2 weeks since the US and Israel have launched their strikes on Iran, unprovoked assault. They started first by striking a girls' school in Minab in the south of the country, killing 170 people, most of whom were children, young girls. Since then, the United States and Israel, this coalition has struck 25 hospitals, targeted sports stadiums, residential buildings, airports, oil facilities, and more. They have also killed Iran's supreme leader and much of his family. Now it is his son who has become the supreme leader of Iran after he was elected into that position. Why are the US and Israel launching these strikes on the country? Well, for starters, the only nuclear power in the region, Israel, keeps claiming that Iran is building nuclear weapons without evidence. It continues and has continued for many decades to beg the US to join it in attacking Iran. You see, there have been crippling sanctions on Iran since 1979. And the goal of these sanctions has been to get the people of Iran to overthrow the government. But more than 4 decades later, these sanctions have proven to be a failure. Iran, despite the challenges of the sanctions, has continued to increase the literacy rates of the country, provide free healthcare, education, and improve public infrastructure for its now over 90 million population. What is the real reason then for why Israel and the United States have launched this attack on Iran? Israel wants total hegemony over the entire Middle East. All other countries are now subservient to US and Israel. For instance, we have Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Syria, etc., that are all implementing policies that are normalizing or close to normalizing with the Zionist entity and ensuring that Israel has total power over them. Iran is the only country left in the region that is standing up to Israel's colonial expansion and its ambitions of expansions. It is arming indigenous resistance groups in the region, whether from Lebanon to Syria, Iraq, Palestine, and Yemen. In response to these attacks, how has Iran responded? Well, immediately, Iran fired at US bases in the entire Gulf region. So, whether the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, and more. And then it also struck Israel. It also struck Cyprus, where there is a British military base, as the British have been involved. It struck a French base in the United Arab Emirates. Really, the Iranian response has been very hard, and it was immediate, and it continues until this day, despite the United States and Israel continuing to claim that they have extremely deteriorated and destroyed Iran's military. In fact, the Iranian response has been incredibly surprising to the Americans that Pentagon officials have stated that they are concerned and worried of US defense stockpiles running low. Now the US is reducing what it is giving to Ukraine because it needs the supplies. Now that Iran has struck some of the US's missile defense systems, including the highly advanced and expensive THAAD defense system, the US is bringing one of its systems that is deployed in South Korea. Iran has also responded and by seeking to close the Strait of Hormuz, which has infuriated the US president, which has led to the United States targeting Karg Island off the south coast of Iran. There have been a lot of lies in what is essentially a war of propaganda as well by the United States and Israel. The United States has been claiming that only 6 of its soldiers have been killed and that Kuwait has brought down the 3 F-15s that were brought down over the skies of Kuwait in friendly fires, that a refueling plane simply fell over Iraq, and that it wasn't brought down by Iran, that the carriers, which Iran has claimed that it hit, the aircraft carriers, were not hit, that one of them had a laundry room issue that went into fire and there was 2 injured soldiers as a result of that. And the other one, the Abraham Lincoln carrier that Iran claimed that it struck as the carrier went hundreds of kilometers away from the region, and Iran said was put out of service, but the United States has claimed that that's not true, that it was never hit and that it's still in service. In addition to all of that, Zionist media has tried to claim that Iran's abilities to fire missiles are severely depleted, claiming that its missile launch rate has declined a staggering 92% since the first day of the war, as Iran had fired 480 missiles the first day, and they're saying that now it's only at a few dozen per day. Now, this is highly misleading. Iran said from the beginning that it would fire its older stockpiles and that it would be targeting degrading the missile defense systems of the region, but it was prepared for a long-term war. And that is exactly what Iran did. As I have mentioned, Iran has hit much of the targets that it sought successfully, including the highly advanced THAAD air defense system, in addition to Patriots, other expensive radar systems, including one at its Qatar airbase, the Al Udeid airbase, which costs over $1 billion US, just that alone, which is used to detect incoming missiles from Iran going towards the Zionist entity. So yes, while certainly you cannot deny that US-Israeli strikes on Iran have surely depleted some of its missile stockpiles and degraded some of its military, it is nowhere near 92%. And Iran has also certainly degraded Zionist US military capabilities beyond what they expected by decimating the infrastructure at their bases. Satellite imagery shows this, and killing and injuring hundreds of US soldiers in the region. Iran has claimed, counter to the US's claim of 6 soldiers killed, Iran claimed in the first few days that it had inflicted over 600 casualties on US soldiers, and this is based on its intelligence reports monitoring ambulance activities around the US bases and other information, which would seem a lot more likely considering the video footage and the evidence that has come out from the bases. Iran has also shattered the perception of invincibility and safety in the rich Gulf states, making it known that US bases don't make you safe, but instead make you targets. And Iran still retains most of its capabilities. In fact, if Hezbollah still retains much of its capabilities, Iran certainly does. For over a year and a half after the so-called ceasefire that Hezbollah had with Israel, Israel kept violating the ceasefire. Israel never stopped striking, attacking innocent civilians in Lebanon. And so Lebanon had no choice, its resistance, but to respond. And now is the time to coordinate with Iran in a armed resistance struggle against this colonial entity. Just the other day, Hezbollah fired over 150 rockets within an hour at occupied Palestine. After Trump claimed that he destroyed Iran's navy, Iran released a footage showing that their naval assets in tunnels deep underground, untouched. More recently, Iran has begun inserting mines into the Strait of Hormuz, with Trump yelling at them to remove them immediately. You can expect that should the Americans try to invade Kharg Island, or Iran, the mainland, to expect Iran to heavily mine the entire strait very quickly to prevent such a ground invasion. Now, no vessel dares to enter the strait. Iran has full control over it, whether the United States likes to admit it or not. The United States won't send warships, aircraft carriers so close to Iran's shores, knowing that it would be a humiliating defeat should an aircraft carrier be sunk down into the bottom of the sea. On March 11, Saudi Arabia said that it is warning of a catastrophe if Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is not lifted. How is all of this happening? Well, we have 2 groups that are actively working together against Iran. One, we mentioned Israel, but unfortunately the other are traitor diaspora Persians who are connected to the old monarchy that was toppled for its suppression of human rights and freedoms of Iranians. They banned women from being able to wear the hijab. They were Zionist, Islamophobic, and they now live amongst us in Toronto, Richmond Hill, Los Angeles, Vancouver, Berlin. These Iranians in the West have strong links to the monarchy, and they left when they lost their privileges because that system that they benefited from was squashed. Since 1979, these monarchists have worked very hard to lobby politicians in the West and to organize around placing crippling sanctions on their own people in Iran and working to designate the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, which works to protect their own country, as a terrorist organization, and they have been collaborating with Israel. While there are genuine grievances that can be made by Iranians about their current government, and while people should have the right to protest, the protests that began in December of 2025 were infiltrated by Mossad and CIA agents, as even confirmed by Trump's former right hand, Mike Pompeo, who said that he congratulates and wishes a happy new year to Iranians in the streets protesting their government and Mossad agents amongst them. Diaspora Persians have also propagated an atrocious claim that the Iranian government had killed more people protesting on its streets in 2 days than Israel had killed in the entire genocide of Palestinians in Gaza over 2 years, from October of 2023 until now, claiming that Iran killed, at first they said 40,000, then it became 90,000, and then it became 500,000 people that Iran apparently killed in 2 days. Ultimately, these protests, supported by the CIA and the Mossad, failed to overthrow the government, and it was only after this that the United States, with Israel, launched the attacks on Iran with the encouragement and support of Israelis and the diaspora Persians. If you are wondering why diaspora Persians are the way that they are, I have done that research for you, and I will soon be releasing a video on that subject, so stay tuned. So what do I see happening next in the region? Well, the situation is incredibly volatile, and honestly, no one can fully predict. We are dealing with highly unpredictable aggressors. There are egos at stake. If Netanyahu and Trump don't get what they want, could they use nuclear weapons? Well, who started stopping them? What is international law anymore, and who cares about it, apparently? Regardless, the United States and Israel have suffered incredible blows to their militaries and their militaries' reputations, and they are highly censoring their losses. The Gulf countries are censoring their losses. We see the police are arresting people who film what is happening or share what is happening on the ground. The reality is tens of thousands of people have now left Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, and are never going to come back. And this image of safety, even if this attack on Iran stops, now we have broken so many barriers and red lines. How can people know that should the United States and Israel go and attack Iran in a few months, in 5 years, that Dubai won't be struck again? So a lot of businesses are likely to evacuate, leave Dubai, that region. And that's going to be a major blow to the economy, which is really why the people in the UAE, 90% of whom are expats, don't have citizenship or rights to being in the country, are there for the economy. But if that's gone, then there's no reason to be there and people are gone. I also don't see Iran's government falling, the current government. In fact, what the United States and Israel are doing are strengthening the government. They are getting the people to increase support for the government, and people are viewing the current leadership there as supporting it. Even the US tried to strike the Al-Quds rally in Tehran, and they claim that the US leadership, much of Iran's leadership have been killed, but you saw much of their leaders out there marching with the people at the Al-Quds rally. So I don't see the Iranian government falling, even if the US and Israel use nuclear weapons against them, which hopefully that does not happen, but I certainly would not be shocked if it did. I predict we're going to see more surprises before this ends, more humiliations for the United States. And now we're going to monitor what this leads to. But ultimately, the US has sought regime change in Iran since 1979 and has failed in each of its different methods used. 4 decades of sanctions, failed. Supporting a protest internally, failed. Killing the supreme leader of Iran and begging the people to take to the streets to overthrow the government and take over, also failed. People went into the streets crying for the loss of their leader. At each step, the US loses more and Iran's government receives more support. If a ground invasion occurs, then the United States is walking into its biggest trap yet, where Iranians will be waiting for them, as the former minister of the country has said. Also, most recently, after the attack by the United States on Iran's Kharg Island, Iran has stated that it will now only increase its attacks on US military infrastructure in the United Arab Emirates. Another point to add is we're seeing increased consent manufacturing, such as a National Post article in Canada saying that Canada needs to enter the war because its base was struck in Kuwait. But Canada's operating at a US base in Kuwait and is supporting US objectives that are attacking Iran. Iran is defending itself. It is not attacking Canada. Also, we're seeing what is potentially false flag operations with attacks of various institutions in Toronto, Liège, Belgium, Amsterdam, the firing of 3 synagogues in Toronto in 1 week, a Jewish girls' school in Amsterdam, a synagogue explosion in Belgium. Most of these events are happening overnight. No one is injured. When nobody is there, the motive is not known. And all of it happens to be at the same time when there is extreme negative attention at the United States and Israel for their assault on Iran. So these are points to keep in mind. It's important to keep critical thinking skills active, and let's see what happens. Keep following me on my social media pages where I post videos, short clips, more frequently to keep you informed and updated on the situation on a daily basis. I try, and I'll be posting here more content, sharing with you events as this goes along as much as I possibly can. Thank you, and have a great day.